الحلم اللبناني، ويقول رمزي حافظ يريد الحلم اللبناني استرجاع الوطن عبر تحويله من دولة لأقليات تتناتشه إلى دولة لأكثرية واحدة هي أكثرية الدستور. هذا الكتاب الإصدار الجديد لك. ما بعرف مين بعد بيسترجي يكتب كتاب ويسميه الحلم اللبناني ويطبع وينشر. أكيد بدنا نستمر، بس بعد في شيء اسمه حلم لبناني.
يعني فاقد الشيء يحلم به.
لا يعطيه.
فاقد الشيء يحلم به.
فاقد الحلم يعني أنت؟
لا، فاقد الوطن، فاقد الوطن، فاقد الدستور، فاقد كل ما اجتمع لحتى يأسس هالدولة اللي اسمها لبنان. يعني لبنان اللي هي نتيجة تراكم عبر القرون وصلت للبنان، للدولة اللبنانية أو الجمهورية اللبنانية. ومن بعدها سنة 1926 توافقنا على دستور معين. هذا الدستور يمكن كان 90 سنة سابق لوقته. ونحن من بعد 90 سنة ما بحياتنا طبقنا هالدستور مزبوط، لا بالنص ولا بالروح. فهيدا الكتاب عم يحلم بلبنان فيه دستور. حلم بسيط. هالدستور فينا نطبقه؟
هيدا هو الحلم اللبناني، حلم القانون يعني.
حلم الدستور.
مش انه في ناس بيقولوا لا، لازم نشتغل على المواطن ان يصبح مواطنا، انه نخترع له من تحت الارض مصلحه مشتركه، يحسوا اللبنانيين انه هن واحد مش مذاهب متقاتله.
اللبنانيين عندهم كثير اشياء مشتركه وهن بيعرفوها وما حدا مضطر يخترع لهم شيء. بس اللبنانيين اذا بدهم التغيير بدهم يوعوا انه التغيير ما حيصير من فوق لتحت. التغيير من فوق مش رح يصير. التغيير ما حيصير الا من تحت.
تحت بدهم يغيروا فوق.
نعم، يعني عبر احزابهم، عبر مجتمعهم الاهلي، عبر انديتهم. عم نشوف انه طريقه اللا دستوريه بتركيبه الحكم بلبنان معكوسه كمان بالمجتمع.
كيف لا دستوريه؟ يعني بيحكوك بالميثاق انه لازم يضلوا كل الطوائف مشاركه، اقل شغله صغيره بتصير بيقولوا لك
شو يعني
راح الميثاق؟
نحن حددنا شو هو الميثاق؟ ما تحدد. نحن بيقولوا
هو التلاقي الطائفي، هذا هو كان الميثاق.
بس لا، التلاقي الطائفي شو يعني؟ يعني ما في غبن بيلحق طائفي. ما معناتها تحاصص طائفي. ما معناتها البلانتون بوزارة الزراعة بده يكون من طائفة معينة والبلانتون بوزارة الصناعة بده يكون من غير طائفة. مش هذا هو الدستور.
في شخصية كبيرة يعني رحلت منذ أيام، مفكر اسمه فريد سلمان.
نعم.
بعتقد كان يكتب كمان بهذا الاتجاه.
نعم.
احترام القانون، ويمكن كان متعصب للبنانيته بطريقة من الطرق وليس لأي شيء آخر. بيقول أنا لست مؤرخا، أنا عقل يفكر بالتاريخ وفيه ومنه كذلك عقل يتصور أيضا. هذا هو المؤرخ فريد سلمان الذي غيبه الموت، رائد القومية واللبنانية السامية المتمردة على المسلمات في التاريخ والدين والسياسة. انطلق فريد سلمان من باريس بالخمسينيات رئيسا لتحرير القسم العربي بالتلفزيون الفرنسي، وعاد إلى لبنان فواكب عهد الرئيس فؤاد الشهاب مقربا منه. توالت أعماله فترأس تحرير مجلة الصياد ومجازين، وأسس المجلة السينمائية الإخبارية الحدث اللبناني. بالتسعينيات تولى إدارة محطة ICN وجريدة نداء الوطن وإدارة لجنة جبران الوطنية. كان له الفضل بإقامة متحف جبران، صاحب قيامة الذاكرة وقيامة الأسامية. له عشرات أيضا المحاضرات والبرامج والمؤلفات، وكان فنان وشاعر. أدخلني إلى عالم الصحافة. حبيت أعمل له تحية اليوم، هو والأستاذ أنطوان قسطنطين أيضا، يمكن هن لهم الفضل الأكبر أني أنا دخلت في هذه المهنة. رحل فريد سلمان، ما بعرف آخر أيام قد ايه كان محبط هذا الرجل. هل كنت تعرفه؟
أنا كنت بعرفه. أولا فريد سلمان ابن بيت كبير، وكان علاقة بيته ببيتنا كمان كتير قريبة. يعني من أنا وصغير صح لي أتعرف عليه وعلى كل عائلته وعلى الله يرحمها والدته كمان اللي هي سيدة رائدة جدا في المجتمع اللبناني.
وأخته السيدة
والسيدة نور سلمان كانت من أقرب صديقات والدتي.
من عزيون بعزي خيو كمان أستاذ ملحم.
أستاذ ملحم والوزير صلاح. وزير صلاح سلمان كان وزير داخلية كمان بلبنان في فترة.
خليني أقول إنه حضرتك كمان يعني ابن رئيس الوزراء اللبناني الراحل أمين الحافظ، بس للمشاهدين في
طيب.
حال في جيل جديد دايما رمزي لازم نذكر.
طيب بس فريد سلمان كان مثل ما عم ندعي بالكتاب كان ثائر على النفس.
صحيح.
وكان فريد مثل اسمه.
كان فريد جدا ما في شك. كمان الموت رحل يعني بهالايام للاسف يعني اللي عم بيروحوا كتار. باسيل سودا صمم على الحياه فغلب بشاعه مرضه الخبيث بالقصات وبالالوان. عرضه الاخير ما طل باخره مثل ما بيعملوا اغلبيه المصممين، زيلوا بتوقيعه باسمه وكان هيدا بكفي. فأي جميلة وأي دار أزياء عالمي لا يعرف المصمم اللبناني الذي عانق النجمات وشهيرات العالم بإبداع امتد على مدى أكثر من 20 عاما. باسيل سودا، حفرت اسمك بالتاريخ. رح أقول لك شو بدي أقول لك؟ رح أقول لك وداعا، رح أقول لك إلى اللقاء، لأنه كلنا على هذا الطريق مع أنه بكير كثير كمان 47 سنة كان عمره باسيل سودا ورحل. أستاذ رمزي أنا بدي أشكرك. نهيت لك الحلقة نهاية حزينة.
هيدي الدنيا.
هيدي الدنية صحيح صحيح. شكرا على وجودك معنا.
أنا بتشكر.
بدي ندعي كتار يقروا الحلم اللبناني، بركي بيرجعوا بيحلموا ببطوطن أفضل. بدنا نبقى مشاهدينا نحن هلأ مع حلقة مسجلة مع السفير البريطاني توم فلتشر. هذا السفير اللي هو عن جد منه اعتيادي أبدا، ما بعرف يعني بالدبلوماسية بيقطع سفراء على لبنان بيحبوا البلد بشكل بيعطوا بصدق وبشغف كتير كبير. شفناه بون لبنان واقف مع مجموعة من الفنانين عم بيدعمهم، عم بيقول لهم لازم يكون عندكم لبنان واحد، حافظوا على هالبلد. اصلا بنشوف ظاهره قد ايه في سفراء بيروحوا بيخلصوا بيرجعوا بيعيشوا بلبنان رغم كل لا استقرار الوضع الاقتصادي وضعه الامني، بيرجعوا بيعيشوا بهذا البلد. يمكن نحن احيانا ما بنعرف قيمته مثل ما لازم. رح اترككم مع هذا اللقاء مع توم فلتشر، من بعده نعود الى العروبه من بوابه اللغه العربيه مع سلام زعتري، مع تانيا عبد غره، مايك ميسي ورانيا صغير. قمنا بعمل كلنا سوا لبريف هارت له علاقه باللغه العربيه، سي دي للاولاد قصص باللغه العربيه ليرجعوا يحكوا اولادنا هذه اللغه الحلوه والجميله. شكرا لك مره جديده. شكرا على الضيوف اللي كانوا معي بهذه الحلقه. الحلقه ما انتهت، بالعكس هلا بلشت. تابعوا هذا اللقاء مع توم فلتشر. انا بشوفكم الاسبوع المقبل. الى اللقاء. Ambassador Tom Fletcher, thank you for being with us. It's such a pleasure having you on set.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Well, before starting the interview, I would like to know, as a diplomat, how much are you allowed to reveal your own mind? How much can you not be diplomatic?
Well, actually, I think if you're doing your job properly, you should be authentic. You should be yourself. And I've always tried in this job not to hide behind all those kind of classic diplomatic lines and platitudes about warm bilateral relations and so on. I think you've got to bring some of your own personality to it.
Well, you're definitely doing that, especially when you write about Lebanon. It's really impressive and amazing. Mr. Ambassador, after WikiLeaks, I mean, it was a kind of whistleblower for a lot of diplomats. Do you feel that it's still the same tete-a-tete that you have with Lebanese officials? They still speak the way they used to? Are you more cautious?
I think it's a fair question because I know that many people here did have a rough time as a result of WikiLeaks, and it probably has changed the way all of us see the business of diplomacy. But I think people can respect this as a confidential channel, and people, I mean, one of the most amazing things about working with Lebanese politicians is that we have the most frank and candid exchanges you can imagine. We have good arguments, we have good debates. I don't think too many people are just hiding behind WikiLeaks or other fears to hide their true feelings. So I think we still have some pretty good conversations, but it's always there at the back of your mind.
Definitely. Do you still remember the first time you were told that you are assigned as ambassador in Lebanon? What was your perception of the country, and did the reality meet this perception that you had?
I begged to get this job, literally. I was working for my Prime Minister as his foreign policy advisor, And he said, well, where do you want to go? I did 4 years, 3 prime ministers. So you can imagine at the end of that, I was exhausted. And they thought, okay, if you can cope with that, you can cope with anything. And they offered me some lovely options, some quieter options. What? I shouldn't say because that would be very rude to those countries. Okay. And I kept saying no. And I kept saying, it's Lebanon I want to go for. And in the end, they backed down. They said, Khalas, okay, go to Lebanon if you must. And I had this feeling that I had a real sense of mission about coming here to Lebanon. I had a real feeling that this is this extraordinary, resilient, hopeful, plucky little country. And I knew then, even then, that we would have such pressure to face because of what's been going on next door in Syria. And I wanted to be part of that adventure. I wanted to be part of that story. And I guess 4 years on, I feel exactly the same way. I feel as passionate today about doing this job as I did 4 years ago, as excited about it. And it really matters. Because I always tell people in the UK and in Europe, if we lose here, this battle to try and find ways to coexist and to live together, then eventually we'll lose that battle in Europe as well. And so I feel that we're on the front line here. Not just the front line in terms of a war, but the front line in terms of a battle for ideas.
Do you feel that they get it? I mean, honestly, do you think that they have bigger challenges right now? They have lots of issues, internal issues to tackle. Do you feel that they get how important it is to keep Lebanon stable and safe and to keep this diversity,
I think,
the way it is?
It's a good question. I think many countries at the moment, particularly with the economic crisis, are going through this phase where they're quite inward-looking. And that goes for many of us in Europe as well. And we have an election at the moment, even. So people are more consumed by what's going on domestically. But I do find, look, I was there last week taking the Mufti to meet
Mufti
British leaders on an official visit. And we went and saw Prince Charles. And Prince Charles was completely focused on these challenges, these issues around coexistence and diversity. And I was pleased that he actually reads all of the reports that we send back. So, people are following it closely. People do understand how important it is.
After 4 years in Lebanon, you arrived here with the Arab Spring, and now you see how it's unfolding, unfortunately. Are you still, if you want to explain politics to a foreigner, living here for 4 years in Lebanon, where you have the local politics, you have the regional, everything has a ground in this country. How do you explain it?
With great difficulty, actually. I always say to people when they arrive that the thing about Lebanon is the more you know, the less you understand. And so often in those first few weeks, you see it more clearly than I do after 4 years. Because it is incredibly complex. And as you say, the interplay between the regional dynamic and the international dynamic and then the crazy local politics is very, very difficult to explain and interpret. But, it's our job as diplomats to try. And so, I normally say to Brits who are looking at Lebanon, I say, look, it basically comes down to 3 things. We need to work here for security, justice, and opportunity. And if we can deliver those 3 things, the Lebanese people will knock it out of the park. They'll do the rest themselves.
I see you almost everywhere in Lebanon, in schools, in restaurants, literally everywhere. When you talk to people, just normal people, do you get sometimes things like, this is the international politics, what we're facing here, what we live in Lebanon is partly your responsibility. Do you get this very often? Do you get the Sykes-Picot issue again? All this.
Of course.
Some of the Arab countries were under British mandate, so I'm sure you get this very often. But how do you react to those reactions?
Well, you can imagine. I do a lot of tours of universities and schools and so on, and I'm always quite keen to get into these arguments and not just to dodge the history and pretend it doesn't exist. And you wouldn't be surprised, but Sykes-Picot comes up, Balfour comes up. These issues about the British and European legacy in these areas. But I find more than that, people are quite focused on the future. And they do understand that, I'm a post-colonial ambassador. I was born long after all these characters.
You just turned 40.
I've just turned 40. Thank you very much. I turned 40 this weekend for my sins. I'm still just about coping with that fact. No, I find people are up for a good debate. And often people come up and they say, okay, we now know there's a conspiracy And I, oh God, you know, here, another
Yeah,
conspiracy,
again.
do we have to do this again? And they say, no, we now know that you have a conspiracy to keep Lebanon stable. And I say, great, okay.
For once.
If there's that conspiracy, then I'm in it. I'm a conspirator, because that is the thing that keeps me awake at night. That's the thing that I work on from morning and night, until night. Trying to keep Lebanon stable, trying to keep that international coalition in place to preserve this country.
So there is a coalition to keep the country stable?
Absolutely. And it's a strong coalition. And it's a coalition that disagrees on many other issues. You know, so for example, America is in the coalition, Russia is in the coalition.
Yes.
Many of us from Europe and across, internationally, across the Security Council, are in that coalition. And there's real firm agreement on the need to keep
So we
Lebanon
cannot
stable.
say that the stability that we're having right now is a normal, natural one. We cannot say this is our wise political class giving us this. This is an international thing.
I think the international consensus helps. And obviously, as a diplomat, I'll claim some credit for diplomats in what we've tried to do there. But actually, the stability you have now is because of the Lebanese people. And I don't just mean the politicians there. I mean the people who are doing the school run every morning and thinking, okay, I'm going to put up with these traffic jams, I'm going to put up with those trouble, I'm going to get on and educate my kids. The people who are still investing in their businesses here, who are working harder and harder to get over the obstacles like the internet or power shortages and the infrastructure problems that we have here. All those people who each day are basically getting on with their lives, they're the ones who are the heroes, I think, of the country, who are keeping this place together.
That's really nice of you. However,
It's true as well.
Yeah, true, maybe. But however, I understood from what you said, and I really respect this honesty of yours. The Syrian crisis would have spilled over Lebanon if we didn't have this stability umbrella coming from outside our borders.
Who knows? It's very hard to tell. But if you look, for example, at even British support, in the last 4 years, our support to Lebanon has increased from under 2 million a year to over 200 million a year, UK pounds. So it's increased by 100 times.
It goes for refugees, Lebanese army.
Lebanese army, Lebanese communities, it goes on education, it goes on refugees, it goes, I was down inside last week opening up a fish market, you know, it goes on local projects. And so there's a massive, massive increase in what we're doing here in just that time. So you see an international community that isn't just talking and isn't just saying nice things, but is actually delivering now. And so I hope that is making a difference. I think it is.
You told me that you begged to get this job, to be ambassador in Lebanon. So what do you think when you see Lebanese young, fresh graduates who ask you for a visa, who come and tell you, please, we want to go to the UK, we want to go out of here, we want to run away?
Well, you can imagine I spend a lot of time talking about visas in Lebanon. And actually, we issue 9 out of 10 visas, and they're normally very, very fast. I say to these guys, look, yeah, by all means, come to the UK, come and see what we have to offer, come and help build your businesses there, come and study, we have fantastic universities, but come back and build your country, because Lebanon needs this young talent. And if those guys give up on the country, then even I will. And that's saying something. Yeah, we need them back here, building their lives and families and businesses inside Lebanon, not just overseas.
Unfortunately, you're leaving us this summer.
I am. I'm heartbroken. It's coming. It's come around very fast.
Yeah. But would you come back to visit, to see friends? And
yeah, I will.
If you have a vacation, you'll spend it in Lebanon, or
maybe not every vacation, but you know, a piece of my heart is staying here, and I will be, whatever I'm doing in the future, I know I'll be working on Lebanon in some way, because this has felt like the adventure of my life. And I don't want that adventure to stop just because I stopped being Said Safir.
During your assignment in Lebanon, what actions by Lebanese politicians impressed you the most?
Normally I'm asked the opposite.
And I know that I'm using the word impressed. I mean.
it's okay. Normally people ask me the opposite to that.
I know.
You know, I think the most important times with Lebanese politicians are those moments when the whole place is shaking, and when things are wobbling, maybe when there's been an assassination or instability in the region. And then I've seen many politicians from all sides actually do quite unusual things then to try and hold the place together. And so the things that most impress me about Lebanese politicians are when they reach out to someone across the divide in order to hold things together. When they kind of put aside the rhetoric And, you know, I've been one of those who've said that the whole March 8th versus March 14th thing is, you know, we've had enough of that now. But when the politicians at those moments say, okay, I'm going to sit down with that guy over there because together we can stop things falling apart, that's when I'm most impressed.
But do they do it for the interest of the country or for their own interest? I mean, now we can see these days lots of reaching out, but we don't know exactly when it is for the good of the country and when it's just personal interests.
Yeah, I think it's both, to be honest. Look, I've worked with politicians in Europe, in America, in the Middle East. You know, like diplomat, no one works completely for other people's interests. They'll always have a self-interest as well. Where politics is powerful is in where those things overlap. And I think often in Lebanon, there's a self-interest that also overlaps with the national interest. But, you know, the most important thing is that all these guys start putting Lebanon's interest first. And it's the thing I've been saying for 4 years now. Don't put Britain's interest first, or France's, or America's, or Russia's, or Iran's, or Saudi Arabia's. It's got to be Lebanon's interest first. Because without that, we have real trouble ahead of us here.
Well, I know how hard you tried. In your article, Tolerating the Intolerable, you have posed many what-if questions. How would you answer some of your questions, like, what if the international community had carried out strikes in August 2013? We're talking about Syria here.
It's a very difficult one to run, isn't it? It was a very tough decision at the time, and our leaders debated it, our parliament debated it very intensely. I remember that being one of the most stressful weeks of my time here, because we didn't know what was coming next. I mean, it would have sent a strong signal that we wouldn't tolerate the use of chemical weapons. Would it have changed the fundamental dynamics? I don't know. I mean, those will only change ultimately by getting back to some kind of political process. I always say the answer in Syria is not more bombing. The answer is more talking. And, you know, that also goes for outsiders as well.
Where do you see the conflict in Syria heading?
It's tough. It is really, really tough. And, you know, you and I, we've worked on this conflict since the beginning. It wears you down every day thinking about these issues. You know, the heartbreaking images that come out of Syria. You know, all of us who've watched this close up have found it a very, very tough few years. But the thing is that wars do end. You know, that's one thing we know, is that wars do end. And Lebanon is an example of that.
Yeah, but it took so long in
My
Lebanon.
great hope is it doesn't need to take so long.
Exactly.
There. I hope we've learned that lesson. I hope that the protagonists on both sides and those who are putting arms into the country in such numbers, that they've learned that lesson. We've got to get back to some kind of political process. And it's essential that those of us working on it don't give up and don't just say, oh, but this is going to go on for years. Because when we do that, we should take ourselves off the job. We should stand down, because we've got to have people in these jobs who are going to be willing each day to be thinking afresh, you know, what is there we haven't tried to get this conflict to come to an end.
Do you have the impression that right now with what's happening, especially on the what we saw in Yemen, the Arab summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, do you think that the statu quo is changing fastly?
I've worked on the Middle East now about 20 years, and there's never really been a status quo. I mean, this region is in constant flux and constant change. So, you know, I just think we're still living more of that. It is uncertain. But we have to get back to those three things I said earlier. For the people of the Middle East, not just for Lebanon, they need security, they need justice, and they need opportunity. And we need to find systems of government and international cooperation that give them those three things.
Which is very tough right now. You have the Israeli elections. I'm sure you're aware of what Mr. Netanyahu had to say. There will be no Palestinian state. I mean, we're back to zero. We're back to where the problem started.
Well, I mean, I'm not a spokesman for Mr. Netanyahu.
Definitely, you're not.
But I think he's been clear that since the election that he's not closed the door completely on a two-state solution. And certainly, those of us in the UK, and I'm pretty confident in the States as well, haven't given up on a two-state solution. We have to redouble that effort.
But we didn't
there's not
see,
a better idea.
But we didn't see anything happening after that speech. I mean, the quartet is doing nothing right now. What is the UK doing for that?
Well, I mean, this was a speech that was in the heart of an election campaign. And I think you've seen statements from within Israel, but very importantly from the American government since then, making clear what their position is on a two-state solution. The American Secretary of State is in the midst of the Iran negotiations in Switzerland at the moment. You know, there's a lot going on, but we can't
nothing
put,
concerning the peace process.
But we can't put it on the back burner. It will, you know, when the moment is right, we have to carry on again. We have to continue that effort because all of the problems of the region in some way are connected to the problem of Israel and Palestine.
Exactly, and you're insisting on justice. Don't you think that justice should start from there?
I don't think that
from the Palestinian issue?
I don't think there are any opt-outs for justice. I wouldn't say there's any part of the region where we say, okay, justice is good for everyone else,
yeah,
but for you Palestinians, justice isn't going to happen. So, of course.
Do you have any idea what's your next assignment? Because they're telling me we're running out of time.
I wish I knew. I haven't decided yet, to be honest. I want to focus every second on this job. When I get to July, I think I'll probably collapse for a while. I'll be exhausted, I'll be heartbroken to leave, and then I'll start thinking about what to do next. But I have a taste for adventure now. Lebanon's given me a taste for adventure, so I won't be able to do anything boring.
Yeah, because it's a difficult country to deal with, and you dealt it for 4 years. So now you want something more challenging?
I'm not sure there's anything more challenging than Lebanon.
There isn't, huh?
I'm addicted to the adventure that you get somewhere like Lebanon. So I can't possibly go anywhere that doesn't have that sense of adventure.
You once said also in one of your articles, the true measure of the generosity of a society is not the way it treats ambassadors, but the way it treats the most vulnerable. You have visited the Minister of Internal Affairs with your domestic helper, and once you were having lunch, I guess, somewhere in an official lunch, and you had lunch with the workers. There were foreign workers or Lebanese workers?
A mixture.
Mixture of
but
foreign and
mainly
Lebanese.
Foreign workers. Yeah.
So you went, you took your plate, and you sat with them, had lunch with them, and then
That's
you
right.
left.
Well, yeah, I was unhappy that day because I'd asked that we sit together, and I'd been told, no, in this place, foreign workers always sit separately. Foreigners sit separately. And so I said, I'm a foreigner. That's fine. I'll sit with the other foreigners, but I won't stay very long. The moment you mentioned with Kalkidan, actually, she doesn't work for me. She doesn't work with me. She works for a different family. But I wanted to show people that actually domestic workers aren't victims in some way. They're actually heroes. And I wanted to show that she was this fantastically articulate, bright, smart lady, and I wanted her voice to be heard. And the important thing that day was that it wasn't me talking about the problems faced by domestic workers, it was Kalkidan talking about those challenges. And she did so amazingly powerfully. And I hope, even if people didn't agree with me about it, that people were at least talking about it.
Is there someone not agreeing about this? Do you see Lebanese who are, I don't know, defending somehow this kind of slavery?
I think you do see people who are willing to look the other way.
Yeah,
and
because it's convenient.
It is convenient. And I do think, I feel I can talk about Lebanon as someone who everyone knows loves the place. I don't think anyone can fault me in my love for the country. And I do feel that allows me to be honest about some of the things I think that should be improved. And this is one of them. I think the treatment of workers is one of those where, for Lebanon's sake, more needs to be done.
I really hope so.
Inshallah.
I hope you shaped our society a little bit. I'm sure you did. One last question. How do you see Lebanon in 2020?
Well, I will be back. I promise you that. I'll be back to have a look. I see Lebanon in 2020 as a dynamo for the region. And people laugh sometimes when I say that. But I think that Lebanon has the networks, the diaspora, for example, and the talent here to survive in an age that's all about networks. I think it's actually got the best location because it's between east and west at a time when power is moving very fast through the region. And I just think it's got that kind of inner resilience. If it's come through the Syria crisis intact, just think what it can be when we're the other side of that crisis. So I see it having the talent and the creativity and that inner resilience and optimism to be a huge success in the future. Oil and gas is coming our way. That next generation coming through who are determined not to be imprisoned by the past, by the wars of the past. I think this country is going to be up for great things.
Well, thank you for saying that. 2020 is in 5 years.
5 years.
I hope we'll have electricity and running water. Thank
Well,
you
that would help.
so much. Yeah, definitely.
But I'll be back to celebrate in 5 years.
Well, I hope to see you back before that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula.
You've been an amazing ambassador. I mean, you still have 3 months here, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot of farewell parties for you.
I fear so. I fear so. But I will leave Lebanon as in love with the country as when I arrived. As I say, it's been the adventure of my life. And I've just been so grateful to all the extraordinary people who've made it such a brilliant time for me. And I wish I could get out and meet everyone. Security doesn't always allow me to do that.
Yeah.
But this place has completely touched me.
Well, I'm sure Lebanon will not forget you. Many people who read your articles about our country, your passion and your love for Lebanon will never forget your name. And we had lots of diplomats, but not too many were so passionate about a place that they have no family, no roots in. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe they'll even stop.
Thank
stop
you for
talking
loving
about
us with all our flaws.
Well, thank you for loving the UK with all our flaws. And who knows? Maybe I'll be able to stop people talking about Sykes-Picot.
Maybe. I doubt.
I doubt
Thank
it.
you so much again for this
Thank you,
great
Paula.
opportunity.